While the Trump administration is taking aim at a major Canadian export, the U.S. Commerce Department is hiking anti-dumping duties on Canadian softwood lumber to 20.56%.
In early 2025, trade tensions between the United States and Canada reached new heights, as former President Donald Trump moved forward with a dramatic 25% tariff on Canadian softwood lumber.
Is hiking anti-dumping duties on Canadian softwood lumber to 20.56%. British Columbia lumber organizations are condemning the sharp increase, calling it unjustified, punitive, and protectionist.
This decision was part of a broader strategy aimed at reshaping North America's trade framework. The impact of this move was immediate and significant, reverberating across industries on both sides of the border. The U.S. timber giant Weyerhaeuser, for instance, faced a sharp decline in profits during the second quarter of 2025, with earnings halved due to a mix of waning demand and uncertainty caused by the looming tariffs. Meanwhile, Canadian officials, caught off guard by the rapid escalation of tensions, began to explore various strategies to counter the tariffs, including leveraging pension fund capital to influence negotiations. On the U.S. side, senators quickly traveled north in an attempt to restart stalled talks before the crucial August 1st deadline. What was initially perceived as just a tariff dispute quickly evolved into a high-stakes political and economic showdown, pitting two major economies against each other. Beyond the immediate consequences for trade, this was a reflection of broader geopolitical and industrial shifts, making the situation much more than a simple tariff battle. The return of a long-standing lumber conflict. On February 20th, 2025, the United States reignited its decades-long conflict with Canada over softwood lumber. The U.S. imposed a hefty 25% tariff on Canadian softwood imports, a significant escalation in the ongoing dispute. At the same time, oil and energy goods were hit with a less severe 10% tariff. These new duties were piled on top of the existing 14.54% anti-dumping and countervailing tariffs, which meant that, by July 25th, Canadian softwood lumber imports were burdened with a nearly 40% tariff in total. The U.S. Department of Commerce issued a new 20.56% anti-dumping rate for Canadian softwood lumber in 2023, signaling a full-throttle approach from Washington. Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick made it abundantly clear that the August 1st deadline was immovable, and there would be no grace period. Weyerhaeuser, a leading player in the U.S. timber industry, voiced support for these measures, citing the need to protect American mills from what they described as unfairly subsidized Canadian competition. On the Canadian side, however, the response was more cautious and diplomatic. The Canadian government was forced to reevaluate its stance and even began considering lumber export quotas, something it had resisted for decades. 2. Weyerhaeuser's profit decline, a clear impact of trade wars. By late July 2025, Weyerhaeuser revealed a grim financial forecast. The company's second quarter profits had plummeted by a staggering 50%, dropping from $173 million in the previous year to just $87 million. Revenue, though slightly above analysts' expectations, was down by 3% to $1.88 billion. However, this slight beat on revenue was little solace for investors, as earnings per share missed the mark during the company's investor call. Weyerhaeuser's leadership did not shy away from acknowledging the difficult road ahead. The company projected an additional $60 million loss in adjusted profits for Q3, blaming weak demand, oversupplied markets, and the impending impact of tariffs. Lumber and oriented strandboard (OSB) prices had lost ground, while builder sentiment had stalled. The U.S. housing market, pressured by tariffs and rising costs. The consequences of the tariff dispute were particularly pronounced in the U.S. housing market. In May 2025, U.S. single-family home sales recorded their sharpest decline in nearly 3 years. This was due in large part to rising interest rates and the significant increase in lumber costs caused by the tariffs. At the same time, housing inventories swelled, leaving many developers uncertain about the future and homebuyers hesitant to enter the market. The U.S. Lumber Coalition, which represents American producers, argued that the increased tariffs were necessary to counter what they claimed was Canada's unfair pricing structure. However, even they acknowledge the broader impact of the tariffs. As construction projects slowed, the pain trickled down the supply chain, impacting sawmills, wood product plants, and suppliers.
If you found this video insightful, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Stay tuned for more updates and content. We've got plenty more coming your way.
For Canada's strategic countermoves, from rhetoric to real action. On the Canadian side, trade officials and policymakers have begun shifting from rhetoric to real action. Canada's Trade Minister, Dominic LeBlanc, has highlighted the nation's $1 trillion stake in U.S. pension funds, which grows by $100 billion annually, as a potential bargaining chip in the ongoing negotiations. Though there has been no direct threat to pull these funds, it signals that Canada holds significant leverage in the talks. Prime Minister Mark Carney has been firm in his stance that any deal with the U.S. must protect Canadian jobs, and he has refused to bow to Washington's August 1st deadline. Canada is also exploring the possibility of implementing export quotas on softwood lumber, a move that would directly address U.S. demands. This shift gained traction during visits from bipartisan U.S. senators, who push for a managed trade solution under the USMCA agreement. Meanwhile, Canadian exporters are recalibrating their strategies. The U.S. share of Canadian lumber exports has dropped from 78% to 68% in just 1 year, with more shipments now heading to Europe and Asia. This shift is a clear indication that Canada is diversifying its markets to reduce reliance on the U.S. 5. America's timber revival. Can it meet demand? In response to the escalating crisis, the Trump administration has pushed for a domestic timber revival. The U.S. has increased its federal harvest quotas by 25%, opening up more land for logging, including regions protected by the 2001 roadless rule. While this move sounds ambitious, experts argue that it will add less than 1% to the national timber supply, an inadequate measure to meet the growing demand. Regions like Scandia County, once home to thriving sawmills, are still grappling with supply shortages. However, there is hope on the horizon. U.S. mills are investing heavily in automation and robotics, allowing them to stay lean and competitive in a challenging environment. If you found this video insightful, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Stay tuned for more updates and content. We've got plenty more coming your way.